let's look at some of the political things going on. A second IRS whistleblower has alleged retaliation now for raising concerns that the Justice Department leadership was acting inappropriately on the investigation into Hunter Biden. So what these guys, this is the second now, what they're saying is that the Justice Department came in and said, yeah, you guys don't need to look at all of that stuff. And they're like, excuse me, we're the IRS. We are looking at all the banking stuff and all the money stuff. You don't really need to. And then that whole staff was let go. This guy is now coming forward, and he is going to be giving testimony on Friday. Our client learned that one of the agents he supervises, so this is not a low-level guy, this is a supervisor at the IRS. The case agent on the case our client is blowing the whistle on sent you an email on Thursday in which the IRS case agent raised concerns about the Hunter Biden investigation. This is what the lawyers wrote in a letter. But the IRS leadership quickly responded with accusations of criminal conduct and warnings to other agents in an apparent attempt to intimidate into silence anyone who might raise any similar concerns. So in this, Congress is saying, you got to stop harassing these whistleblowers. It's got to stop now. Now, the FBI has just failed yesterday to sign over a document that whistleblowers say the FBI have, which is showing a criminal scheme involving Vice President Joe Biden and a foreign national. They won't admit to having it or admit to not having it. It's just part of an ongoing investigation, and we can't really comment on that. So Congress, which oversees the FBI, Congress has said you have to produce this. They said first by May 3rd. May 3rd, you gotta release it May 3rd. Then they said by yesterday they were going to have a closed door meetings with the FBI. So we want to see that at the closed door meetings. They still won't produce it. So now, I guess the House Oversight and Accountability Committee are going to, what? I don't know. Maybe another sternly worded letter, or I'm not sure. But they're backing Congress into a corner. And I don't know. I'm starting to have hope that there are enough people in Congress, at least, I don't know about the Senate, but in the Congress, that they're going to fight their way out of this. They're not going to take this.
For so long, there's been that belief that eventually Congress would step up and take the power that they have.
They have to.
Right? We've talked about the REINS Act with Mike Lee recently.
And by the way, that is if it's left in there, the REINS Act is in the budget deal.
That would be massive. It would be a really big improvement to our government and our country. It basically would limit them from making these little rules that no one votes on. What is $100 million in effect? It should be so obvious that you shouldn't need a new act to do it. But if you're going to affect the economy by $100 million or more, you have to get a vote of approval. You can't just do it willy-nilly.
Yeah, it pretty much takes away the power of the administrative state to do things like the ATF is doing right now. You can't just make up laws. The laws are created by Congress.
And this is so, you talk about the Constitution and the importance of it all the time, but it's so important because what people have done, they've decided, you know what, we want things. We can't have the things by these rules. So let's come up with new rules. The REINS Act is a good example of this, where they just decided, well, we'll just give all the power to the administrative state and we'll just let them make all these rules up. Therefore, we don't have to go through all the trouble of the vote and the debate and exposing this to the American people. We might get voted out. Let's give we'll give the responsibility for those things to other people and let them do it without a vote, without any approval. The Soros DAs are another great example of this. We can't get people to approve laws that just let violent criminals out of prison. So what if we instead spend a bunch of money, it's a very effective process financially because you don't have to spend that much money to win a local DA election. Spend a bunch of money, get some local DA elected, and then tell them, ignore all the laws. Ignore them. Just you have prosecutorial discretion, so just don't do any of it. Just bend that rule to the millionth degree, and then go out there and ignore all the laws that have been passed. You don't want criminals to go to jail? Fine. You don't want sanctuary cities? Fine. Just ignore all that stuff. Who cares if those are laws? And so they've decided to try to go around the Constitution and around the rule of law by doing these things. It's happened in the executive state. It's happened in the on a state-by-state basis, as localized as cities. And this is their plan. They've given up trying to actually win these debates. They've just decided to go around them and wait for you to think it's normal. And then they don't have to win the debate.
Well, hopefully the REINS Act will be left into this bill, but I don't know what's going to be left into the bill. We're talking about the bill on the debt ceiling. Mm-hmm. I'm watching McCarthy, and he seems rock solid on this. They always started too late. We've been telling the Republicans since November that they had to go. And this time, it's the Republicans, because the first thing McCarthy did when he got in was send a letter to the White House. We have to start working on this right now because there are some things that we are not going to approve. So we need to start negotiating. And now the Democrats are behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, what did McCarthy say? They did not negotiate for 97 days after it was initially proposed.
Right.
And what's so silly about this, they keep saying, well, we don't want to set the precedent that we have to negotiate every time we need a debt ceiling increase. That would be crazy.
What? Why?
Well, why, first of all? And if you're telling me that the default is so terrible, right? It's the worst thing out there, and I do agree it would be catastrophic if we went to default.
But we won't.
We shouldn't, right?
Because we won't. It just requires Congress and the Secretary of the Treasury to sit down and select what's going to be paid and what's not going to be paid.
Right, and you'll have a long road there. Now, you shouldn't even get to that point, of course, because the Republicans have put out a bill that is pretty sensible. I mean, it has minor cuts in our government spending. Not even cuts. They're just cuts in the future increases. They're not even cuts. They're cuts to the future increases of spending. It is not. We're going back to 2019 spending levels in a lot of these categories. Oh no, this is not that catastrophic. It's not that ridiculous. But for us to default, the Democrats would have to say that these minor cuts to future increases is worse for the country than default. Because they have an option. There's been a bill that's already been passed by Republicans. It's already been passed. All they have to do is get on board with it. So if they thought that this was worse than default, then perhaps it would be sensible for us to go into default. But obviously it's not worse than default. So just get in there and negotiate something out that's in between. We get that the Republicans might not get everything that they want, but find out a place to settle this. Because they keep saying, well, if we negotiate, that's going to encourage future negotiations around the debt ceiling.
Yes.
Well, yeah, that's the whole point of the debt ceiling. The point of the debt ceiling is like a gut check and saying, hey, guys, you keep bumping up against this number that has trillion in it. Maybe instead you should think about how to get a little bit more fiscally responsible. And instead they're like, well, we're basically going to show them by defaulting. We're going to show them we don't want to default so much that we're going to just default. Well, that's an inane argument.
What do you think he's going to do? Do you think he's going to negotiate and come to something, or you think he's going to just play hardball and go, nope, no negotiation? Because that's where he's at. No negotiation.
He seems to be weakening a little bit on that. And I do think eventually we will get to a place where Republicans will be able to claim a little bit of a win. Democrats will say we didn't give them everything that they wanted. They held us hostage. They're bad people. They're mean. And eventually we get this. I will say it is May 23rd. Now, I don't believe the June 1st date. The June 1st date is not true. Mm-hmm. But fundamentally, it could be true if the right number of people pushed in a direction that was hurtful to the United States. I mean, people with bad intent could make that date true. As you point out, Glenn, they can stop funding turtle tunnels for a while
Yeah.
and give us extra days. There's a lot of things they can stop funding instead of not paying our debt. And I think their argument, based on the 14th Amendment, where they say, well, it says in the 14th Amendment, our debts are, we have to pay them, so we have to pay them. Well, that would indicate that they would have to not pay a bunch of other stuff before they got to not paying the debt, right? Like, it's just like in your own household. Hey, we have the kids' summer camp budgeted here, but we don't have enough money to pay the rent. Which one do we pay? You don't pay the summer camp thing first. And then you get to the
there's
point.
lots of summer camps.
Lots of summer camps. Now, according to Joe Biden, there is literally not $1 we can cut from this budget.
You know what's really weird
actually his position.
is because that's what Nancy Pelosi said years ago. The cupboards are bare, nothing to cut. And then we added like $7 trillion, and it's still bare?
Yeah, apparently that was all very necessary.
How much money?
I mean, everyone knows, of course, there's money to save. You might even say that there are important programs that you like. But still, every organization has waste. I mean, waste would at least buy us some time. But, non-essential programs would also buy us a lot more. And so there is more time than June 1st. But it is a little it's a little close. You kind of like to get this thing settled. And maybe put in a little bit of a harder cap for next time. Maybe put a cap out there that's a few years in the future that says we actually shouldn't get to this, guys. Let's not worry about the negotiation next time when we get there. Let's come up with a plan to not hit it next time. Why don't maybe we go the other way? Maybe instead of increasing the debt every single time, we go the opposite way and decrease it. What do you think about that idea? I know it's wild and crazy, but maybe that was more fundamental to what the founders were talking about with the 14th Amendment than what you're doing here. Or you're just increasing it all the time and yelling at people when they ask you to spend a little bit less.
Well, I just don't think we can spend less, Stu. I just don't think that's even possible.
Cupboards are bare.